Hi YouTube. Today I want to make a short little video about setting up a VPS or a server at home. I decided to write up an article about it on my website, which you're looking at right now. Initially, I came up with this idea that it might be a good idea to do something like this. I have a friend and the guy was like, bro, I have way too many subscription services. It seems that people are starting to catch up with the fact that we're paying for way too many things that we actually don't need, and there's like free alternatives. So the guy isn't really very technical. He doesn't really understand a lot of things in the technical sense. I mean, he can use a computer, but he's not an IT guy. He doesn't know much about it. So I decided to make this ChatGPT generated image and write up the article and basically provide like a small little guide for non-technical people on how to set up a VPS. Maybe because you might want to explore, maybe because you might want to learn something, you might want to tinker, different kinds of stuff like that. And I actually would encourage people to give it a try. The worst case scenario, you would probably learn something out of the whole ordeal. So I created this technical guide for a standard procedure. You might want to host a VPN. Maybe you want to self-host your own streaming service with something like Plex or Jellyfin or something similar. There's a whole bunch of guides and tutorials out there, and the truth is, I haven't really ever seen people actually walk you through on how to properly set up a VPS in general. So I guess we're gonna go ahead and do that today. And without further ado, I would just want to, suggest some VPS options, some VPS providers, because maybe not everybody can afford the budget or has the space or, the opportunity to slap a server somewhere at home and just forget about it. It's not that cheap, especially nowadays with the prices of hardware. So yeah, let's check these out. First thing, we have Contabo. I've personally been using these guys for over 7 or 8 years now. Multiple servers, multiple instances, highly stable. Most of their VPS servers have an upward limit of 2 terabyte or something, which for normal people is way more than enough in terms of traffic. So you can see what they offer and the prices that they offer here. There's a map also on their website somewhere with their global coverage. Next up, we have Hetzner. I'm also super happy with these guys. I run a lot of production servers with them. Very stable, never had a problem with them whatsoever. None of this is sponsored, by the way. Then there's Vulture. I haven't really had the chance to work with anything that these guys provide. Then there's DigitalOcean, same story here. And then there's Linode, again, same story here. I haven't really used them. I'd be looking forward to, getting familiarized with their services. So none of this is sponsored, none of this is monetized, but in case you're interested, you can use either of these as providers. I would recommend going with Hetzner just purely because this is where my best experience is. And I'm not saying that the others are invalid. There are also other providers that I'm not showing here. So let's go to the article. So this is my website. I will post this link to the blog post on my website. So the first thing that we're gonna actually do is on my home server, I have hosted a Ubuntu 20.04 VM. It's got 4 cores and 8 gigs of RAM, which is about what you would get with the average image of a VPS with any of the providers I just mentioned. Usually, when you set up a VPS with one of these providers, you're gonna set up a root password that the provider is gonna provision for you. I highly recommend that you instantaneously change the password immediately upon login. But in this situation, there's gonna be a lot of similarities between my VM and what the providers can give you. But there's also gonna be some differences just because, different providers do different things, and I'm running like a pretty much bare bones image here. So initially, most providers aren't really going to provide you with SSH, which is a secure shell, and you're going to have to set up that for yourself. So the way that you do this is they would provide you with like an IP address and a port for a VNC connection, which is essentially this thing here. Now, this is the equivalent of my IP address. This is the name of my server within the network that I'm in, and this is the port that I will be using for this specific machine. What we're going to do is hit connect. This is a completely fresh install of the thing, and we're going to log into our server. So the account that I created for my server, yours might differ, is Nullata, and we're in. So the first thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and change the SSH configurations and also set the root password so I can log in with SSH and root and continue setting up my server. Okay, so we're gonna change the user to root, and now we're gonna go ahead and edit the SSH configuration file, sshd config. The server should already be running on port 22. I'm not going to change anything for now. The only thing that I want to update here is to permit the root login. Whoops. And right quit. Now we're going to do systemctl restart ssh. We started fat fingering already, and systemctl status ssh. Let me see if the service is enabled. Yeah, now it should be enabled. This initially I was kind of off, but that this thing was disabled. But anyways, now I'm gonna set a very secure password for the root account, and I encourage you to do the same. Okay. Now just straight up exit out of VNC. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna use Windows Terminal, in this case with Windows Subsystem for Linux. You can also use like just the simple, Windows Terminal. You can use programs like Putty. Visit the article, it's gonna have references to that. So, okay, continuing on, we're gonna SSH into the server. It's gonna ask us for the fingerprint exchange. So this is added to the known hosts. So we're gonna go ahead and say yes, of course. And now we log in with our root password. So one thing that we notice immediately, and I'm doing this for myself, you don't need to do it for you. I have a PS1 environment variable because I like my terminal prompts colorized because I lose the white terminal prompts. We're gonna edit the bashrc file, and I'm gonna make it red 31. Just try and relog in just real quick. Let's actually inspect what this thing is. Like, this is your user, so it basically displays this thing. Then it's your host name. Then it's your working directory. Basically, it's this thing. This is root's home directory right now. This wrapping expression with the color options here is basically saying just color just this part of the terminal right now. You can Google this, how to set a PS1 prompt. It is the easiest thing in the world. So the first thing that we're going to go ahead and do is update the system. So we have the most recent packages available. Notice that I'm not using the sudo command because I'm running things with root right now, but that's just going to change in a quick little bit. All right, and we're back in. The server disconnected us because it updated some of the security packages, and that's fine. Let's actually go into the article and see what we have here. So we've already upgraded the packages. Then we have a hostname control command, which is going to set our hostname. In this case, my server already has a hostname set up, so that's up to you. It's one of these things that are nice to have, essentially, especially if you're going to be running like DNS servers or some stuff like that. It's generally good practice. Now, since we're running root right now, let's add an admin user. This admin user is going to require a password. So we're going to provide that. We can skip these things that it's going to ask of us. Is the information correct? Yep. We don't need all that extra data collection that is eventually going to, go to California. Well, it doesn't right now, but, ask California lawmakers what they're doing, not me. Okay, so what we're gonna do with the admin user is we are going to add it to the sudo group, which means that the admin user will be able to execute super user commands. So this is exactly what we're gonna do right now. Okay, then we're gonna move on to SSH key authentication. So first of all, let's actually check that we can log in with the admin user. Yeah, and it seems that we can. Okay, so it already has a PS1 prompt, which is okay. So I'm gonna log out of here, clear the console. Okay, so then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna create a new SSH key pair so that we can passwordlessly authenticate to the server with those keys, as we are later going to disable password authentication via SSH altogether. So if we're gonna, SSH keygen, create the key pair with this command. There's a few alternatives to this command in the ways that you can actually type it, but this one is fine already as it is. I'm not even going to change the email here. Like, this is for demonstrational purposes only. Okay, overwrite, yeah, because I already had it. Okay, all right. So now we're going to go into the server 109. This is in my remote home network, copies over the key. And now what we're going to do is we should be able to authenticate to the server without a password just by those keys by issuing this command. And we're in. Simple as that. Moving on. This is, by the way, an alternative way to do it if you want things to be a bit more verbose and hands-on. So next thing, we're gonna edit the SSH configuration file so we can harden the SSH service, meaning that, we're gonna make it less accessible and less vulnerable to public interest. Notice that here in the article, I list for you to use the Nano editor. I'm gonna use V because I like V more, but Nano is simpler for most people. So, just use what you like. V requires an extra tutorial. like there's a meme about V that is still relevant today. But anyways, let's go ahead and do sudo V, the SSH configuration. It's going to ask for our password. And the first thing that we're actually going to do is we're going to go ahead and change the SSH service port. Then the next thing we're going to do is actually we're going to set permit user login to permit root login to no. Then public key authentication needs to be yes. Authorized keys files is the default. What else do we need? Oh, we need to disable X11 forwarding. Where was this thing? X11 forwarding. Please go away. Unfortunately, we no longer like X11 because people say it's insecure. I don't really care about it, but let's do the best practice thing. So next up, what we're gonna be looking for is allow TCP forwarding to no. This is no explicitly. Max retries can go to 3. Where was this option? Okay. Max auth tries is gonna go to 3. We're gonna make it so that if you try to authenticate more than 3 times, there's gonna be a service that's gonna block you out essentially for at least a limited time. So yeah, make sure that your authentication checks out after this. And finally, we're gonna go ahead and allow. Oh, we don't have this. Yeah. We're gonna whitelist a bunch of users for authentication. We're just gonna straight up go ahead and paste this and save it. And now what we're gonna do is sudo ctl restart SSH. Let's try authentication again. Bam, and we're in. Now we no longer should be able to log in with root. Whoops. Yeah, it's not allowed any longer to log in with root after the settings that we just created. Next up, let's make sure that we have the simple firewall installed. Yeah, okay, we already have it. By default, it already denies everything that's incoming, but let's list UFW sudo UFW status numbered. Oh, we need to enable it, of course. You'll probably also need to do this on your VPS as well. Enable. Yeah, sudo UFW. Don't disconnect, by the way, because this might break. You might have to reinstall your server if you disconnect now. Allow 2222/TCP, and there we go. Bam. Now you could potentially allow for other ports down the line. This is standard HTTP traffic. This is HTTPS traffic. You can enable these down the line. I'm not going to do it now. And let's do a verbose status check. We should only have the SSH port enabled right now. Oh, of course. Yeah. Keep in mind IPv6 is still enabled. Depending on what it is that you're doing, you might want or need to disable IPv6. For me, right now, I don't care. This is for demonstrational purposes. Okay, so next thing, we're gonna install this little thing called fail2ban. What fail2ban is, it's a service that runs in the background, and it allows you to monitor certain applications and what they do. And if there's a problem, you can define some rules with fail2ban where you could deny an IP address further access and just block them out instantaneously, or lock out a user, or do some custom action like that. In this case in particular, we are going to basically create a jail is what it's called for SSH connections. So what this jail is gonna do with failed to ban is it's gonna monitor SSH on this port. It's gonna log what it's finding on this path, and it's gonna have a max retry of 4 before it bans somebody that's a little too persistent for 1 hour. And that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and just do this. This is very simple, very straightforward. We're gonna copy the failed to ban jail conf to make it a jail.local. Of course I can't. All right. Now what we're going to do is sudo v, and now we're going to edit the local jail, which is based off of the default conf, and we're basically not going to have anything in here. Like, let's just look at the defaults. There's a whole bunch of documentation that you can read, and we can find there's going to be somewhere in here there's going to be a default for the SSH service, but there's going to be a lot of things in here. So here's actually the SSH service. So here's what we're gonna do. Straight up copy this thing, not the entire thing. We don't want to duplicate the title section here. We're just gonna straight up copy this, and I'm just gonna do double D's to delete these rows and do this, right, and quit. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna enable failed to ban. Okay. Now we should start it. Sudo again. Cool. Sudo systemctl to check the status. Seems to be running, no errors. All right. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to basically say use the failed to ban client to show the status of the monitored service, in this case SSH. Whoops. Again. All right. This is pretty much it. Very, very straightforward, very simple. Okay, next thing, which a lot of people are gonna like actually, is we're gonna install webmin. So a lot of this admin work, even though I have like over 10 years of experience and so on and so forth, all that jazz, and I'm super comfortable working with the terminal and all that. The reality is that I'm lazy because I'm a mammal, and I'm lazy and I want to click around with the mouse as much as I enjoy working with the terminal. Next thing, what we're gonna do is we're gonna install an application on our server that's going to allow us to connect to that server through a web UI, which will give us most of the options that you would need on a day-to-day basis, so that you can manage your server remotely, so that you don't have to use the terminal. Okay, so first up we're gonna do is this sudo apt install curl. Curl allows you to send requests to web services, and it comes in packaged with most systems. And next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually use curl to get the download script for webmin. Yep. And now we're just gonna run it. Set up the webmin stable repository. The download script's gonna do a whole bunch of stuff for you automatically, so you don't have to think. And now we just need to run this command. Now there's also usermin. It's an additional application which is very similar to webmin, and it's for user management, and usermin is more for like user focused stuff. We are not interested in that at the moment. So we're going to go ahead and do sudo. It's going to ask us for permissions. Do you want to install all of these packages? We say yeah. And after this thing is done, we're just going to go ahead and check the status to see if webmin is running. All right. And yeah, it is running. So here's the thing. Now webmin runs on port 10,000 by default. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and copy this, go to our browser, and enter the IP for your server. In this case, for me, it's this one. Notice that this spinny thingy is trying to spin and whatever, and the service is running, but nothing's happening, right? The app is not starting. So what we need to do in this case is we're going to go ahead and add a rule. There you go. It failed. Add a rule to the firewall on our server so that this thing can be accessed externally. So what we're going to do is sudo ufw allow 10,000/GCP. Bam. Now we reload and we see this. What is this telling us? Basically, what it's telling us is that this site is using a self-signed certificate. This means that the connection is HTTPS, that it's a secure connection via TLS, but the certificate is signed and provided exclusively by the server, and it cannot be validated with any external certificate service providers anywhere. So go to advanced and proceed to this, because all of this is fine. Now what we're gonna do is we're using here the admin user on our server. Just go ahead and type in your admin user, type in your password, remember me. This will save a cookie, and there you have the UI. The thing is already loading. Down here, you're gonna see stats for your server, and up here, you're gonna see some also more stats about the thing. Okay, I strongly encourage you to explore and kind of like orient yourself what these things are. Here's our fail to ban. Webmin detects when we have it set up automatically. Genuinely, this is a really, really, really cool solution, and you can do a lot with it. You can control your server with it. So, take a look at this one. So let's go back to our article. Now we have Webmin, and we also allowed it through the firewall. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do something really important, because this is what is going to allow us to host whatever types of applications that we're going to want to put on this server. So our next step will be to install this thing called Docker. Let's check out what Docker is. Docker is a container framework. Essentially, container support is built into Linux itself, and what it does is basically it runs your applications in a contained environment. This means that the contained environment has everything that the application needs to run, but is essentially isolated from the rest of the operating system, not allowing the container access to the operating system in general. This is not really a VM. A lot of people mistake this for a VM. Virtual machines, like this is a virtual machine. But inside of this virtual machine, we're going to run containers, meaning that we're going to run secure pieces of software that the operating system can control, but those pieces of software cannot tinker with the operating system. I cannot explain it any simpler than this. There's a lot of depth there. There's a lot of arguments to be made, but this is essentially what's going on. So first things first, we're going to clear the terminal, and then what we're going to do first up is we're going to go ahead and remove anything Docker related that we might have on our system, because there's some stuff with versions sometimes, and we want a clean slate. Okay, so first up, we're gonna install the certificate management stuff again with the curl thing. This is so that we can accept new package repositories and install them on our system, and so that they would check out as valid. So go ahead and sudo. Yeah, everything we already have everything. So now we're gonna go ahead and create a directory where we're gonna place a GPG key and register that with the system. So we just copy this portion right here. Of course, dude, with the sudo stuff. Okay, sudo, and then we're gonna sudo the curl too. Let's see if this thing is all right. Okay, dude, I'm used to working with root all the time, which you shouldn't. It's just that, I don't mind it. That's the sudo stuff is throwing me off. I apologize. Anyways, yeah, let's go ahead, and now we're gonna register the repository. Yeah, just sudo that as well. We're gonna register the repository. Oh my god, man, I should have switched to root. Sudo, bro, thank you. I should have switched to root. Anyways, so let's update the system. Okay, now we have the repositories ready. And now we're going to go ahead and install Docker Community Edition, Docker Community Edition CLI. This is the tool that you're going to be using in the command line to control Docker containers. This is container.dio is a container framework package. This is a build plugin, and this is a compose plugin. You will see what it is used for later. Again with the sudo, bro. All right. And now let's check out the version. All right, everything's working fine. Now we're going to check the compose version. Great. Let's check the status. It's enabled. Everything is running great. Let's actually run a container world. Let's actually run a container to see that everything is working, and it is. Okay, so notice that again, Docker wanted me to run a sudo command here. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up a dedicated user specifically for Docker. So for ease of use here, I'm just gonna straight up switch to root because this sudo stuff is annoying to me. We're going to create a Docker user. The reason for this is that if we have a particular user just for Docker, it's going to be even more isolated than, the rest of the system. So we add this user to the Docker group. Now we can go ahead and change to that user. And let's now run the docker run command for hello world once again, but notice that it doesn't have the sudo thing. Cool. So now we exit out of this user, which is exit or control D. And this is pretty much the thing. So next thing what we're gonna end up doing is we're gonna make in the OPT directory. I still don't know what people call this. This is a directory for basically user programs, kind of like program files, if you will, sort of, on Windows. The next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna create a directory in here called volumes. Okay, then there's the volumes. Now we're gonna allow Docker user, which we just created, with the Docker user group ownership over this directory. Okay, now if we list it again, there we go. Now we're gonna change the rights of this directory. So now we're gonna touch up on Linux permissions for the directory we created. So what 755 does, and there's a site, chmod calculator. So with this site, you can learn chmod. It's super straightforward. It's super simple. So if we write 755, let's pull up the terminal right here. It allows the owner of the directory to read, write, and execute. There we have it. And then it allows the group to read, not write, and execute. And for any other users which are outside of this group, it's read and execute only. Okay? Pretty simple stuff. You need to see it 5 times to get used to it. It's nothing scary at all. Okay, so let's move back onto the website. We created our volumes directory. So in this directory, what's going to happen is when we host containers for different applications, say for example VPN or whatever, all of the data, all of the files for these applications are going to go in their own directories inside of volumes here. And the only thing that bridges the container and the host operating system is essentially these volumes and environment variables. And volumes allows us to persist data such as settings, database storage, various downloadable files or whatever. It allows us to persist it on the operating system. So when you stop these applications and the container dies, the next time the container is booted, the data that the container was working with is not lost. If we don't do this, then the data that a container requires to run to persist its state will be lost. So yeah, not every container requires this, but it's, most of them do in some shape or form. So yeah, next, if we want, we can also add our admin user to be able to manage files in there. Since it's outside of the Docker group, I'm just going to go ahead and do this just for the sake of doing it. Why not? Takes literally seconds. So this is what I was talking about. So this is a directory structure. Inside of volumes, we might have an application that's called Nginx. This is a proxy gateway. We could host it with a Docker compose file. Then we can have a database. Then we can have some other application. And, this will be the data for the application, each one of them. And this will be the descriptor file, essentially, which would deploy that application. Okay, so enough said about this. There's a whole bunch of tutorials on this stuff. Next thing is something that not many people actually end up doing. It's not very required in general, but I would say that I would recommend it in many cases. In Linux, some Linux distributions, at least, there's like this thing called shared memory. It's kind of like paging in Windows, but not exactly. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make it so that it's not accessible to the entire system, essentially. Like, don't worry about it too much. Just, you can edit this file, which I'm gonna do here. This is the FS tab. I strongly recommend that you don't, if you have stuff in here and you don't really understand what this is, either ask AI or somebody more experienced with this stuff, or, just leave it alone and try to and not touch it. So we're going to go ahead and add this thing in our FS tab configuration. Pretty straightforward. Save it, and that's pretty much it. Now, for the next time you reboot your server, because basically there's going to be periodic reboots, it's recommended that there are, we're going to install, instead of us having to manually, periodically, maybe after a server reboot, or whatever, we can configure automated updates, especially security updates on the system. So this is done by installing the unattended upgrades package, which is already installed in this system. And now we're going to go ahead and use the dpackage reconfigure utility to set unattended upgrades happen automatically. Now, take a look at what this thing says. Applying updates on a frequent basis is an important part of keeping systems secure. By default, updates need to be applied manually, usually. This is why I said this earlier. Alternatively, you can choose to have this system automatically download and install important updates. So we're going to go ahead and say yeah. And now this is complete. The system, once it sees that there's something really important that needs to happen, it's going to periodically check. And if there is, it's going to install that for you. That doesn't mean that it's going to do all of the package installs for you. You will still periodically have to log in and just, update your packages and stuff, but this is fine. So there's a quick little checkup here about stuff that we already did. And this is essentially the entire thing that you need to set up your system. And it's now up and ready to run for you to self-host whatever it is that you want. I hope that you found this thing helpful. Please give it a like if you did, maybe subscribe. I would really appreciate that. And moving on to more complex things. And the next video that I'm going to post is actually how to host something on this system, since we actually don't have anything useful now. And that's going to be how to self-host a VPN, which I already have an article about this, and you can find it. Hold up, way down here. I created an application which simplifies hosting a VPN, especially WireGuard in this particular situation, and streamlines the process, making it effortless for the average user. It has the potential for advanced settings for users that really know what's up, but we're gonna just go ahead and do the bare minimum, straightforward thing possible. So I encourage you to look at this article and the other article as well. I will provide the links in the description down below. Thanks for watching. Live long and prosper.